Welcome to this talk on nature from the viewpoint of Dharma and religions. And let's begin with a thought experiment. Let's assume that this is year 2050 and that global warming has taken its toll and the civilization is coming to an end. So people are dying all around you, and big damage has been done to the civilization, and still some people would survive. But in the same time, what happens is a corona-like virus attacks everyone. This is highly infectious, and it attacks everyone. And the virus is very strange. It does not kill people, but it actually it destroys your memory. And therefore, what happens is people fall into this amnesia kind of a thing. They forget everything about the technology, about the techniques of the civilization, about the science of it, and so on and so forth. So if we go into this thought experiment, what will happen is something like, let's assume that something like 2 million people, 20 lakh people survive in various parts of the world. And they survive, and they are there for some time, and then their progenies take place. And finally, what happens is something like year 2150, there are a lot of people who are now into the new kind of environment, new kind of civilization for the first time. And they don't know anything of the past. So the technology is not known. They don't know whether they are Hindus, they are Christians, they are Muslims. The religion is completely gone. Dharma is completely gone. My question to you is, and although this is an online thing, we can ponder over this for a moment. My question is, what will these new people who do not have any kind of memory, who have this amnesia kind of a situation in which they have forgotten all their identity, all their past identity rather, what would they worship now? And the answer should become quite obvious, because right now what is happening is they have become totally dependent upon the forest. They have become totally dependent upon the plants, animals around them. And so obviously the first thought they would have to worship anything would be the forces of nature. And these forces would include typically things like sun, moon, earth, fire, sky, whatever elements of nature. So the first worship which comes, and which comes naturally, is the worship of the environment, of the nature. And therefore, if you see our kind of sacred texts, typically the Rig Veda and all the Vedas, why only Rig Veda? I mean, even Atharvaveda for that matter has a chapter called Prithvi Sukt, in which Mother Earth has been prayed as a divine force. So what happens is, and this is Dharma. So in nature, Dharma will arise automatically, spontaneously. It will happen in a sahaj, what is called sahaj, in a sahaj manner. It has to happen that Dharma will be kind of intertwined with nature, with and the Prakriti will be worshipped in all its forms. In fact, outside it will be Prakriti, the various elements, say the rivers, mountains, trees, animals. Inside it will be this Devta, which is representing this Prakriti. So outside and inside, there would be a kind of sense of divinity, a sense of being intertwined with the nature. And this is Dharma. So Dharma is essentially intertwined with nature. It is interwoven. It is inseparable. Actually, it is one with Prakriti. And Dharma and Prakriti cannot be separated for that very reason. And the relationship between the humans and the Prakriti would be a kind of divine one, in the sense that humans would know that they are deriving everything, including their food and everything else, all the resources, from the nature, and therefore it would be what is called a mother-child kind of a relationship. And this you can see in Vedas. You have, for example, I told you about Prithvi Sukta. There is a mother-child relationship there. Essentially, you should also note in this experiment that when nature is being worshipped, nature has immense amount of diversity. And therefore, all elements would be worshipped. So typically a river, a mountain, trees, animals, everything is being worshipped. And that implies that dharma would inherently be polytheist. That many devtas, many forms, many elements of nature would be worshipped. So it is automatically a polytheist kind of a situation where you have worship of large number of gods, which represent various elements of nature. You would also, if you closely see this experiment, you would also note that dharma is, it has to be, I mean, without anyone telling you that this was your way of worship, you have automatically started to worship nature. So the fundamental principle of dharma returns even if civilization ends. And therefore, actually, dharma is Sanatan. And that is why we call it as Sanatan Dharma. Dharma is always Sanatan, because no matter what happens, whether the civilizations are decimated, they are destroyed, the fundamental principles of the civilization, that is dharma, will come back in the Mool Prakriti. It will always happen. And the worship of the Mool Prakriti will always happen. Also, if we go further into this experiment, we realize that one day when these people are exploring around them, because they are new in the system, ecosystem, and this ecosystem will be in pristine quality now because humans have kind of stopped their intervention. And we have seen this happening in the case of Corona, where hardly in a matter of 3 months or 4 months, the state of environment has hugely improved. So nature would be lush kind of, and it would be very diverse and very rich kind of situation all around them. And when humans start to explore, because humans have a nature of exploration kind of thing inside them, they would explore new kind of fruits, new kinds of foods, new kinds of fruits, new kinds of vegetations, new kinds of herbs. And one day, by experiment, it would happen that by taking a particular herb or a particular plant, they would invariably go into an altered state of consciousness. These are psychedelics. These are called psychedelics. We have them plenty in nature, and they produce what is called DMT, which is the same thing which is produced in meditations also. And therefore, what will happen is, the moment they take this, they would realize that there is a huge connection between everything, that they themselves as humans are connected to the entire nature in a very intricate kind of a manner, and there is a web of life which is teeming all around them. So they are not just individuals, they are a small part of the entire nature. And therefore, this is what is called ecocentric worldview, in which ecology is at the center of the worldview, of the center of perception, or the center of understanding. And we realize that humans are a mere part of that ecology. They are not over the ecology or nature. They are a mere small part of that nature. And then what happens is, because altered states of consciousness are possible, people do meditations. Typically in our civilization, the Indian civilization, this was done very, very systematically. The meditations were kind of done for ages together and were done in a very, very systematic manner, recorded everything kind of. And our whole civilization was, in fact, after this experiment of trying to find out the nature of oneself. And therefore, the nature of oneself with, in relation to the entire Prakriti. And once meditations happens, there is a realization that there is what is called a consciousness. And that consciousness itself is taking various forms. And therefore, it becomes from subtle, from being sushma to gross, sthul. and it is taking various forms in its kind of play, and from being subtle, most subtle, let's say in the form of devtas, it becomes humans. The same consciousness takes the shape of animals. The same consciousness appears as plants, rivers, mountains, stones, and so on and so forth. And therefore, this entire world, as we see, the outside world becomes kind of worshipable. It becomes hugely divine because the consciousness itself is the divine principle. And therefore, what happens is we regard the entire Prakriti as being immensely divine and therefore worshipable. And therefore, this is what is called Leela. It is the Leela of the consciousness which is important. And we see divinity all around. We see that everything is a play of this Leela actually. And therefore, everything becomes kind of worshipable, everything becomes kind of divine. It is to be considered sacred and so on and so forth. And so this eco kind of centric worldview is immensely, it will immediately imply that things are actually divine around you and worshipable. And living with the cycles of nature, because now you are living with the nature, in the nature, you would realize that there are cycles of sun, moon, there are cycles of time, there are cycles of materials, and you would also come to realization that one type of body is the food for another type of body. So the same material is being circulated again and again. There are cycles of this, and you would actually see that the dead body goes into the mud and into the earth, and then it kind of rejuvenates itself in the form of plants, etc., etc. It provides nourishment to that. So things and entire ecology will build upon that, not just plants, but large number of insects, etc., etc. And you realize that life is actually, it's going on in cycles. There is a connect between you and everything else, and that you yourself are taking various forms, and then there are cycles of life and birth. And the moment this happens, when you realize that this life as it is not the only kind of chance that you have got to evolve yourself, you realize that it's a play, and it's the same consciousness which is playing around in various forms. You realize that there are many, many chances you will get to evolve. And therefore, the psychological pressure to perform, actually, it disappears. And life becomes hugely kind of a celebration, a perpetual celebration, a play, a Leela, which is taking place around you 24/365. And therefore, if you see any of these tribal kind of cultures, you would find that huge amount of celebration is there in their life. It's dancing, singing, it's socializing, meeting people. It's all kind of art forms which emerge from this kind of realization that everything is a kind of divine play, and it's all Leela going on. And you will be in a bliss. This is very unlike our civilization, which has gone into some kind of anxiety, depression. People, you see people with a lot of anxiety, depression, etc., these days. They have everything, but not the internal bliss, not the internal joy. In a quest for making careers, for earning money, for earning fame, we have lost that kind of connect with the nature, which should have emerged automatically in a dharma kind of situation. And therefore, if you see these tribal societies, you will find that people are full of joy and full of ananda, what can be called as anand. And this is the joy of existence when you are aligned with dharma. So being aligned with dharma implies that you are aligned with nature. And this automatically will result in divinity all around you. And this automatically will result in kind of ananda or joy, blissfulness from inside you, which is the blissfulness of existence. You are happy because you are kind of situation. And you would see that dharma is so very aligned to Prakriti or nature, that when you try to do an experiment on yourself, trying to find out who you are in relation to everything else, you go into what is called, so there are 4 ashrams, and you go into what is called Vanprastha ashram, the 3rd ashram, in which you have to go to the forest. So basically, if you really want to explore who you are, if you want to find out your relationship, your existence, the nature of your existence, you have to go to a forest for this precise reason, that dharma and prakriti or nature, they are aligned with each other. Let us now go back to the nature of religions, and particularly the monotheist religions. So I'll discuss only the monotheist part of it. And let's go back to the experiment, thought experiment, which we were doing. And let us ask ourselves as to what is the chance of a monotheist religion appearing in this scenario. And the chance will be nil, because everyone is experiencing the same kind of worship around themselves. You are in nature, and you are in a very thick and luxuriant kind of a nature, which is extremely rich. And therefore, rivers are flowing because you have to get water from them. So you naturally will have to settle near the rivers. And there is forest all around, mountains, animals, plants. It's a very rich kind of an ecosystem. And therefore, there is worship of everything around you. Everything is divine. But there is no chance that somebody will say or claim that there is an exclusive God who talks only to this person, and who this person is having an exclusive access to this particular God. This God idea, the exclusive God idea, will not immediately arise. It will arise much later in the mind of someone. And in the person in whose mind this will arise, you may call him a prophet. But certainly this will not arise in nature. It will arise in somebody's mind. And my question is, to whom will this idea come? Will this come to a person who's kind of a common person, or let us say a beggar on the street? Even if it came to him, the idea came to him, and he told you that he has exclusive access to an exclusive kind of a God who doesn't want to talk to anybody else, you would laugh at him. You would condemn him, you would laugh at him, you would think he's a lunatic person. He's out of his mind. And therefore, if you see the history of these cults or religions, you would find the same thing happening. For a long time, Christians were a laughing stock in Europe. For a very long time, Christians were a small kind of a cult, and they were laughing stocks. For a very long time, Muhammad was in fact, he had to leave Mecca and he had to go to Medina. He was persecuted because people would not believe, actually. There's no way people will believe. It is their own experience in large numbers that nature is divine, that God is in everything. Therefore, this idea of an exclusive single kind of a God is will not be acceptable. But this would become acceptable only when someone who's sitting in power, most likely political power, would get this idea. So typically, for example, if we see our own history of civilization, we find that the first idea which came was probably and there would have been many more, but the recorded ones we see, Hammurabi in Babylonia in around 1750, 1800 BC. He laid his own kind of code, and he did realize other gods, but for him, he was the representative of one particular god. This idea became more and more kind of concrete with time, and it was finally in Egypt in Akhenaten's time, around 1350 BC or so, and in fact, Akhenaten actually destroyed the temples of other gods, typically Amun. And he took his surname as Aten, Akhenaten, in the name of the god Aten. And he started the worship of Aten. I would like to point out here, and we should be clear on this, that and he Akhenaten ruled on in the name of Aten, excluding all other gods, and he claimed that he's the only kind of person who has access to Aten, and therefore if Aten is to be worshipped, Akhenaten is to be believed by his masses over whom he was ruling. So we should be clear on this kind of understanding, that religions will arise, the claim, not just the religion, but the claim that somebody is having an exclusive access to a particular god will arise in the mind of someone. And if we see the life history of Moses, you would find that in Egypt, Moses actually grew up in Egypt in the palace of the Pharaoh. And therefore, from there, if you read the history, you would find out that from there he picked up this idea that there can be an exclusive God and there can be an exclusive access to someone who, and that someone becomes important in the process. So the idea is that the idea itself is exclusive to one person. It is not universal, unlike dharma, where everyone kind of worships various forces of nature without anyone telling them. It comes spontaneously, it comes automatically. Nobody is going to tell someone to worship everything else around it, but it comes automatically. It is sahaj. This is very different. Religion is very different. This is not sahaj. It will not come automatically. Somebody has to tell that he has access to a particular god. And dharma arises in nature. Even if we see this in terms of geographical location, you would find out that the idea first came to the kings and emperors, and therefore the idea arose in royal palaces which were cut off from the nature. So royal palaces did not have the kind of it's a built kind of construction, and therefore the idea did not arise in the mind of somebody in nature. It arises in royal palaces or in places which are largely cut off from the luxuriant kind of nature. And even if it arises in nature, it would always arise in least kind of diverse ecosystems, least rich or rather poor ecosystems. It would never arise in rich, luxuriant kind of nature where ecosystem is kind of very diverse and very rich, because there the dharma will arise. So a cult will never arise in such a kind of ecosystem. It would arise in desert-like conditions, which are dry, fragile, where you don't have rich kind of ecosystem. And the moment a cult arises in a rich ecosystem, it will have elements of dharma inside it, which means there would be emphasis on a universally available truth. In religions, the truth will never be universally available. It's not possible, because it's arising in the mind of someone. And therefore, because it is arising in the mind of someone, that someone becomes extremely important, supremely important. And hence the claimant, the individual claimant, also becomes kind of worshipable and supremely important. And therefore, what happens is, when you have these religions coming up, these religions don't arise in nature. These religions will instead arise in somebody's mind, and that somebody has to have political aspirations. Therefore, you should understand, and we should all understand this, that just as dharma and nature are intertwined, they are two faces of the same coin. Similarly, religion and political aspiration for power, they are intertwined, they are interwoven, they are inseparable, they are one. Religion and politics goes hand in hand. So this must be very clear to us, that religion is not dharma. Dharma was intertwined with nature. It is intertwined with divinity all around you. Religion is intertwined with politics, with political aspirations to catch political power for personal benefit. And if you read the political history of religions, you would actually find this in religion after religion. You take the example of Christianity and Islam, who are more accepted as the kind of representatives of religion. You would find the same thing there. The church captured political power, and virtually the capture was so much that people had to ultimately bring the concept of secularism in Europe. And the liberation from the clutches of church took a long time. Europe fell into a kind of what is called dark ages of 1,000 years. All the art, culture, civilization was gone. And as soon as church came. Similarly, in Islam, for example, the politics is quite clear. They in fact have a concept of Khalifa or of Caliphate, where Khalifa is the ruler, in fact. So the Caliphate is to be established and Islamic State is to be established. Now, the question is, what do religions think of nature? For Dharma, it was obvious. Dharma and nature are one. If nature is there, Dharma will be there. If Dharma is there, Mool Prakriti will be there. Okay, so Mool Prakriti and Dharma, they are one. And the relationship in case of Dharma is that you would see the divinity all around you. When you consider the religions, you would find that religions are occurring in somebody's mind, they are arising in somebody's mind, and they are talking of political power, capturing political power through the use of religion. That is the aspiration. Now, what has it got to do with nature? So we go back to Genesis and we find out that in scriptures there is a story of Adam and Eve. This is not Ardhanarishwar. Okay, this is not the concept of Ardhanarishwar. In Ardhanarishwar, it is half male, half female. It's a very divine form. The first form is half male, half female. It's the Sangam of what is called Purush and Prakriti. In fact, even there, the name is Purush and Prakriti. So the name of this Ardhanarishwar is Purush Prakriti. Okay, so it's again nature which is coming into play. But if you see the story of Adam and Eve, if you go back to that, and I'm sure you would have heard about it. So they were not created together. Okay, Adam and Eve were not created together. Firstly, Adam was created on the day of creation of animals, of humans. And Eve was not a direct creation. Eve was created later because Adam was feeling very lonely. So God said, okay, for his company, for his enjoyment, for his pleasure, we create what is called Eve. And the Eve was not a direct creation. Okay, one should be clear on this. It was not a direct creation of God. God created her out of the rib of Adam. Okay, and for the pleasure of Adam, for giving him company. And if you further go into this story, you find that they ate what is called a forbidden. So God has already told not to eat this forbidden fruit. But then they eat this particular fruit, and as a result, God is angry. Remember, this is a God which is arising in the mind of somebody. He would have all the colors of the mind of that somebody. And that is why if you see the Indian civilization, there is a lot of emphasis. When you do meditations, there is a lot of emphasis which is laid on purity of mind. But in religions, there is no emphasis on purity of mind. Now the God himself is arising in the mind of somebody, and mind will have its own color. And therefore the God himself will take that color, and therefore the God himself can be partial, God himself can be jealous, he can be angry. So this was the God of wrath, the anger. And then God punishes kind of Adam and Eve for defying his order, and therefore there is a fall. They come to the earth, they are thrown on the earth from the paradise, from this garden, and their coming on earth is a kind of punishment. So they are not coming happily here, they are coming here as a kind of punishment. And the God is up there somewhere in the heavens, he's not here. and they are sent as a punishment on earth. Therefore, it's a single lifetime they get. It's an opportunity of a single lifetime. You can either find heaven or you can either find hell in perpetuity. So life is a very kind of serious affair, because this is only one chance you get here. Okay, this is only one chance you are getting here. Life is not kind of, you will not again take birth. You will go either to heaven or hell after this. And therefore, it's a very serious affair. Life is to be taken seriously. There cannot be arts, there cannot be music, there cannot be celebrations. And therefore, you would see that many of the hardcore means many of the, I mean, if you really read the Islamic and the Christian philosophy, you would find that celebrations are many times banned, music is banned, art is banned, drama is banned, all kinds of things are banned. I mean, they will not even allow you to take a photograph of yours many times. And therefore, kind of, it's a single opportunity to go to heaven or hell. And remember, they have been thrown as a punishment on earth. And therefore, life on earth is what is called earthly. So there is a word in English, for example, it's earthly. Now, what does earth mean? Earthly means, it doesn't mean divinity. Earthly is a kind of sin. Earthly desires. You have earthly desires, very sinful desires. So life is coming out of the original sin. Life is sinful. Life is not divine. Life around you is not divine. It's sinful. It's profane. It's not divya. It's adivya, or it's divyatahin, we should say. And coming here is a single time opportunity for you to find heaven or hell. And remember, who was the one who is responsible for this kind of punishment of being thrown onto the earth? Who was it who is responsible? It was the Eve who was responsible. Eve was kind of firstly created from the rib of Adam, number one. Number two, Eve was, it was Eve who got influenced by the serpent, if you remember the story. And she virtually forced Adam to eat this forbidden fruit, because of which they have been thrown on the earth. And so it's the female which is actually responsible. And remember, in all civilizations, you take Chinese civilization, you take your own Indian civilization, you go to Greeks where nature is called Gaia or Jaya or whatever. And you will find that nature is always a she. It's always a feminine. Purush and Prakriti. Prakriti is always a she across civilizations, even in West. So nature is a she. So if you are writing about nature, you will have to write she. And therefore, female is responsible for the fall. She is not a direct creation. Nature is feminine, and therefore it is inferior. And therefore, once it is inferior, what happens is, it is a master-slave kind of a relationship. It is meant to be enjoyed, just as Eve was created basically by the God to be enjoyed by Adam by giving her company, by giving him company. Same is here. Nature is to be enjoyed. Nature is to be kind of used for your own benefit. It is to be tamed. It is to be conquered and enslaved. And if you read the scientific history of science, you would find this philosophy all along. All along you would find, in the history of science, you would find this. We don't really have time to go into that, because that's a separate chapter on which there can be a separate lecture. But this talk, I would focus only on religion and dharma. And so there is a kind of exploitative relation between the earth and between the kind of humans. And if you read, in fact, I will quote this. If you read Genesis 1, verse number 28, I directly quote this to you. I will read this. About the sixth day creatures on land, this is written. In the image of God, he created them. And female, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them. And God, so when they were thrown on the earth, God was very angry. He threw them on the earth. But later on, when these people had a remorse kind of a thing, he blesses them. And then what he does is, what the God does is, God blesses them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply. So the first task you are given is be fruitful and multiply. You have to increase your numbers. Remember, if religion arises in the mind of some king or emperor, if religion is intertwined with politics, with aspiration for political power, how do you capture the political power? It is only by increasing your numbers. Okay, this will typically happen in a democracy. So God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply. And therefore you would see, for example, church has been against the use of contraceptive devices. They want your population to increase, actually. The ummah should increase in the Islamic language. And then God says that, and replenish the earth and subdue it. So the language is subdue it, go and subdue the earth. Now this is a very aggressive kind of a language. You don't have to live along with other creatures. You subdue them. And have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that creepeth upon the earth. So you have a dominion. So as humans, what has happened is, firstly, you are told by the God himself that you have complete legitimate right to exploit nature. You have a dominion, Adhiraj, and this is granted by the God himself. So you as humans, you have a legitimate right to exploit the nature around you. And remember, when this is said, this means this lays the foundation for the environmental degradation which has taken place in the past few centuries. This lays the very foundation of that, actually, because God has made it a legitimate right to exploit kind of nature and exploit all the animals, because you have this dominion for you. And remember, God is not here. The God is sitting somewhere up there in the heaven. The up is a very kind of, it's a strange idea, because what is up to you will not be up to the Americans. They are on the other side of the globe. But in any case, I mean, you assume that there is a heaven somewhere, and it's up there somewhere, and God is sitting up there. So God is sitting over the nature. God is not manifest on the earth. God is not manifest in the nature. Nature is meant for the exploitation of the humans. Remember, this is completely against the concept of dharma. In dharma, what happens is, we discussed this, that it is the consciousness itself which is taking various forms. So God is both, God or consciousness rather, we should not use the word God, because God is a Christian God. The consciousness itself is Vishwamayi and Vishwatirna both. It is inside the nature and it is outside the nature. It is both, the consciousness. The God, the Semitic God, the Christian God, or the Islamic God called the Allah, or the Jews God of the Jews called the Yahweh, the same entity, is supernatural. He does not sit inside the nature. He is sitting above it. So it's a supernatural God. God, the creation and the creator and the creation are separate. These are two different things. In dharma, creation and creator both are same. You see divinity all around you because the creator himself is there in the, or itself is there in the consciousness itself is there in all natural forms. But in religions, what happens is creator and creation, they are separate. And there is nothing divine about it. You are here as a result of punishment. And therefore, what happens is this is all non-divine. This is all profane. And therefore, what you see is that even the animals, for example, there has been a long debate. If you read these debates of Christian philosophers, you would find that there has been a long debate on whether, I mean, it's debatable whether they are alive in the sense of having a soul or not. There was a long debate on whether the blacks have, of Africa, they have a soul or not. So these are, I mean, once you recognize that everything has been created for the humans, it is a hugely what is called human-centric civilization. Okay, so the civilization which results from religions is human-centric. Humans are at the center, legitimized by their right to exploit by the God himself, by the Allah himself, or by the Yahweh himself. And this is completely opposite to what Dharma is saying. Dharma, we discussed this. Dharma is ecocentric, where ecology, the entire ecology is at the center. But in religions, ecology is not at the center. Humans are at the center, and you have a right to exploit nature. And therefore, this is kind of responsible for much of the strife that we had over centuries when nature was exploited like anything, and kind of we have come to this stage where I had to initiate a thought on what will happen if tomorrow everyone disappears. And this is a reality. I mean, the global warming is, Corona is a smaller thing. The global warming will wipe out civilizations if we don't take care now. So the difference should be clear that number one, religions don't arise in nature. Number two, they arise in the mind of somebody. They have a strong connection with political aspirations, with political kind of aspirations to get political power. They arise later than dharma. They cannot, dharma is the natural, spontaneous thing which will happen if civilization is decimated today. Religions will not happen spontaneously. They have to arise in somebody's mind. Religions will tell you that the female form is inferior, and therefore you have right, humans, particularly the males, have the right to kind of exploit nature for their own benefit. In the dharma terms, there is no question of exploitation, because you are part of that nature which is divine, which is you yourself. Actually, you are inseparable for that. So I can go on, because there are a number of other reasons why this damage has been done to the environment. But let us stop here, because this is an online kind of a thing and it will become too much to digest. Maybe we can have a session of a few questions and answers. So I'll hand it over to Rahul.
Mukulji, I have a question. So you said that monotheism arises in minds of people mostly with power. That would not be true for either Muhammad or Jesus.
Yes.
They would argue.
Yes.
Yes, because they both came from.
Yeah, so the idea, you are right, absolutely right. Actually, I should have explained this. The idea, original idea of having political power by virtue of an exclusive God will always come in the minds of emperors. And therefore, I went into history telling you that it occurred in the mind of Hammurabi, it occurred in the mind of Akhenaten. And then once this idea comes, there would be many more who would like to claim this idea, because it's a wonderful thing. This idea is wonderful, actually, that you can somehow make people to worship you for ages together. And then it will come into society. So you would see from emperors, it will seep into society. Whosoever is seeking power, this will happen. We know from the history of Islam, we know from the history of Christianity, they were all seeking power. Even Moses was, in that sense, seeking power. Muhammad himself was seeking power. He had his own kind of... the aspiration is there, but now it will seep into the minds of even a common person like me. If my bhumi of my nature, of my swabhav is not pure, this will arise into me, that I can easily get, and this is why cults arise. Okay, for a cult, you don't need to be in power. This is why there have been so many cults. There have been so many people who have claimed an exclusive God, access to exclusive God, but they were either killed or eliminated because, and somehow it's a matter of great research that Christianity and Islam could reach to those levels where actually people believe on anything. In this kind of you, when in this time, when actually on a small thing which you post on the WhatsApp, there will be 10 people who would be kind of ready to draw out swords and kind of have debate with you. Nobody questions the belief. Nobody. Millions and billions of people are actually believing on the same thing. Now the idea originally arises in the minds of emperors and kings, but then it seeps. Everyone, now today, even a common person would know that if he has to become powerful, he can have his cult. It is possible. So yes, Rahul, absolutely true. Jesus, for example, but Jesus never claimed political power. It was church in the name of Jesus, in fact, who claimed political power. Church made him church made him Jesus Christ. Actually, he was not Jesus Christ in that sense. Church has made him that. In Islam, political aspirations were clear right from the time of Muhammad himself taking into this. I don't know whether I have answered it to your satisfaction. Have I answered you to your satisfaction?
Yes, I mean, I understand it. It flows after it came in someone's mind.
Yeah.
The other argument they would give, is that to the point that you made, that if on the thought experiment, that by default it would all be nature worship. And the idea of a monotheistic God as an all-powerful outside of nature would not naturally arise. But once again, Muslims would argue that it is in the spirit of prophethood that actually it is heard from divine sources. And I could actually carry that argument forward. Even Shrutis in our own tradition are not things which are not, the scriptures which are considered Shrutis are not of human origin. They are considered of divine origin because you heard them and then you carried them forward. It is not as distinct from Smriti. So, I mean, in all types of religions, or even in dharmic side, one could argue that things are of divine origin and they would come naturally in order of, in normal natural order as well.
Yeah. So I would try to answer that. See, dharma does not arise in the name of a particular individual or in the mind of a particular individual. The truth is accessible to everyone. Anyone who wants to have access to the truth is universal. The gods are universal. You cannot have access to a single mind. So in dharma, when dharma arises, and we did this thought experiment, when the memory was gone, it would spontaneously arise in the mind of everyone. And the truth will be available to everyone, anyone who's trying to make an experiment, anyone who's showing his willingness, the truth is ready to descend upon him and tell him that what is the nature of existence. And that is why if you read the Hindu Vedas or Upanishads, nobody is claiming that it happened in my mind. There is no authorship of that. It has happened in the minds of numerous people. It has been heard, the Shruti has been heard by numerous people. You and I have equal amount of possibility of that. If we do our experiments properly, if we live our life properly, we should have the same kind of Shruti descending upon us, which is very fine. But in religions, this is not the case. The truth is not verifiable. It arises in the mind of a particular person at a particular time, at a particular geographic space. So it is happening to a particular person, and then that person is saying, you cannot verify it. You have to be a believer. And therefore what happens is, immediately the followers are believers. You have to keep on believing. Now, whether that truth was truth, you don't know. And I also give you a hint that it is extremely important, at least in the Indian philosophical context. There is a whole process. When you do meditations, there is a whole process of purification. You have to have the virtues of tyag, aparigraha, satya, brahmacharya, etc., etc., all kinds of titiksha. You have to have these qualifications. You have to render yourself pure, because that can be heard. See, we are like vessels. We are like vessels. If there is a color to vessel, the water will appear as colored. Now, if you are pure, you lose all colors of your personality. In that case, what happens is the reality descends. And you know the reality in that case. In case of Semitic religions, what happens is the medium need not be pure. The prophet need not lead a life of purity. The prophet need not lead a life of what is considered essential in the dharma. Prophet can be just a person. It so happens that the grace falls on him, but he is not pure. There is no question of meditations. There is no question of any kind of qualification for that. It just happened that he was the chosen one, and that is why the word is chosen one. He's chosen by that. Now, if he is a chosen entity and he's not pure, what will happen? The question is, what will happen if the vessel itself is not pure? Then there will be potential for huge damage in future, because what happens is the vessel itself was not pure, the medium itself was not pure. He interprets, even if it is a divine invocation, which it's a divine thing which he's hearing, he would have a tendency, because his man is there, okay, he will have a tendency to interpret things in his own interest, in his own desires, way of desires. And therefore, it happens that even for yogis, I mean, it happens if you are on a good state of meditation and you want wealth, wealth will come. If you want women, women will come to you. If you want fame, fame will come to you. And therefore, a yogi has to be kind of has to purify himself, get rid of all these things before he can venture into samadhi and other things. But there is no qualification. This person is a chosen person, and his life is considered divine by the followers just because he was chosen. And there is no basis of choosing. I mean, you have to believe that this thing has happened. There is no basis of confirmation of that. Whether that Shruti is which he heard can be confirmed by others. It is not possible. A Muslim, for example, cannot, even by leading a life which is completely kind of in conformity with Hadith and Quran, etc., with the Sunnah, etc., etc., he will not have access to the truth. The truth is exclusive. It is limited only to the Prophet. It is not for everyone. And therefore, what happens is, this is the major difference. In our system, in the Dharma, Shruti is heard by everyone. It is possible. Even today, I mean, you do an experiment and you will find the Shruti happening to you. You would confirm what is there in the Shastra, and you can go against the Shastra. So Shastra is not everything. Your own experience counts. Your own experience of the truth matters. There, what happens is the scripture becomes all important, primarily because it has been heard by somebody, by a specific person, and which cannot be confirmed by the masses. It's not possible. I don't know whether, again, I have answered you properly.
No, yes, yes, you're answering. I think this choosing without rhyme or reason has always sounded completely absurd to me. And whenever you argue, there is no counter argument, no favorable argument that ever comes across from the other side.
Thank you, Mukulji. I really don't have a question as such, and I just want to put my gratitude that the line of thinking or the thought process that you provoked today, exactly this is something I had been thinking for a very long time. The same pattern on which you have put the things, and this was the thing that clicked me most. And thank you very much for really explaining these things to me, which were a bit hazy till now. My only request to you is that, is there something, have you put these thoughts together in some blog or somewhere, or in some book or anything, that I can access it more?
Sir, I'm currently in the midst. In fact, that is why this talk has happened so late, because I am in the midst of writing a book. I never thought of this, but it happened suddenly, out of nowhere. The corona gave me an opportunity to get some time, and I am in the midst of that book. I think that book would release itself by, maybe I expect maybe Diwali time or maybe later, but it will come this year. I'm putting everything which I understand there. I don't know how pure my understanding is. That is for everyone to decide. But whatever I have understood from life, and whatever I have understood from the Ashirwad and blessings of my own gurus and others, I'll be putting in that. So it will come, sir. Maybe if you can give me a mail, I will try to send a PDF or something later on. It would surely be published.
Mukulji, it was wonderful listening to you. This exposition of the connection between dharma and nature. Now, we believe in this unitary aspect of dharma and nature. Now, what about Advaita? It says Vishnu is separate and the souls are separate. Now, that's also a part of our Hindu beliefs and thinking, what Madhvacharya said. Now, would you like to say something about that?
Sir, as I understand this, Hinduism is a unique kind of ism. It's a unique kind of philosophy which recognizes duality as well as the Advait, both. So it recognizes the world. So till I am there as an individual, till I exist as Mukul Kulshrestha, let's say, then I have to have a creator. I have to have somebody who sustains me, and I have to have somebody who destroys me. So there is a concept of, as you said, Vishnu. So Vishnu is right now sustaining me till I am Mukul Kulshrestha. The day I go into Samadhi, Nirgur Samadhi, absolutely, I lose my individuality. That day, neither Vishnu exists, nor Mukul Kulshrestha exists, nor the world exists around me. That day, I am pure bliss, pure consciousness. So this is Dvait, Advait, both. There is a lot of debate, as you say, amongst the Acharyas on Dvait and Advait. But for those who practice this, who know about this, for them it is obvious. The moment you exist, the gods will exist. Vishnu will exist, Shiva will exist, Brahma will exist. There is somebody who has made you. The moment you lose your own, what should I say? I mean, we are all vessels in that sense. So the moment we lose our vesselhood, that very moment we will become all. And we would become what is consciousness behind all these God forms. So the point is, the moment you lose and this is a Gyani. I mean, this is a Gyani. Gyani has no personality. He is not there. Even though we can see him as a body, he is no more there. And therefore, for a Gyani, the world does not exist. And it does simultaneously exist if he wants to see it, because then he has to invoke his own personality in that case. So he can see both if he wishes. But in the absolute terms, the world will disappear. So the world is there, and all these devatas, including Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, all are there till I am Mukul Kulshrestha, and till you are, I'm sorry, I forgot the name. So till we exist, yes, there is a creator for us, there is a sustainer for us, there is a destroyer for us, and we have to worship them. But the moment we cease to exist in the highest states of yoga, which is becoming, yoga means itself, in fact, means becoming one. That very moment, the world will disappear. If the world disappears, the gods who made the world, the gods who sustain the world, the gods who destroy the world will also disappear. So this is the beauty of Hindu Dharma, Sanatan Dharma, that you have both in place. You have a world, and the world is therefore is to be worshipped, is to be revered. You have to be a Karma Yogi because the world exists for you. And till it exists, you have to be a kind of karma yogi, and you have to do whatever comes to you as naturally comes to you, and that is dharma. So till then you have a dharma. But once you are a jnani, the world will lose its meaning. Dharma will also lose its meaning. You are into consciousness, which is all alone. And then you see that in this consciousness, there arise worlds, and that the consciousness itself sustains the world, and then the consciousness itself destroys the world. Then you see everything passively, without taking part in the entire creation. But till you are there, the gods are there. I don't know whether I have successfully explained it to you. But,
there's a question from Alok Tripathi ji. How does the process of present social development, especially links to heinous crimes, can be stopped with a dharmic link of religion and nature worship?
where is the scope of crime? Yeah. Sorry, please complete this.
No, that's it.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if this is within the context of the...
Yeah, it's fine. Everything is within the context of dharma or religions. Everything. It's fine. It's very fine. If you are into dharma, how can you create a crime against? How can you do a crime against somebody? We saw this in this talk earlier, that you realize at some point of time that you yourself are taking various forms. When you are harming nature, for example, you are harming yourself, actually. It is not a third party. You are one with the nature. All you are worshipping as a form of divinity. Everything is divine. Where is the question of crime coming into this? And therefore, if you read the works of in history, if you read the works of visitors, our own historians, but the visitors, Megasthenes, for example, or Aryans, Indica, or if you read Phaon, or if you read this person who came in Harsha's time, Sang, if you read their works, they are saying that crime is very little. There's hardly any crime. People, once they say something, there is no written document there. Just by saying, people would and supposing it happens that I take money from you and I'm not able to return. The role of the court was only that you go there and both of us will agree, yes, he has taken money, but he's not able to return. So there is no lie in that. This was the only crime. And there were punishments then prescribed for this, because the role of the Raja is to provide justice and give dand. Both have to be done simultaneously. So in this society, this kind of society, crimes like you see today, and the society is extremely open. It's not a closed society. I mean, why would you rape somebody? I mean, you can propose somebody. You can. There is no issue. I mean, as far as both the parties are agreeing, that there are all kinds of vivahs which are possible. So this was a very, very open society, extremely open society. Now, what has happened is, in the 1,000 years of slavery that we had, firstly the Islamic slavery, then the Christian slavery, we have completely lost track of what dharma is. We think that dharma is another religion. That is where the problem lies. And if dharma is another religion, then you get mixed up, which is what is the problem of secularism also. You get mixed up, you mix up the values of religion, you bring it into dharma, and then there are all kinds of problems. The point is, the crime is done against whom? If there is an exclusive God in terms of religion, only my life is important and my property is important only to the extent that I follow that religion. The moment I don't follow, I'm not a follower of that particular prophet and that particular book, that moment I have no rights. And therefore, what you call crimes, somebody raping, somebody having love jihad, is not a crime from their point of view. You have to be clear about it. We have to be, as a society, we should understand this. This is not a crime from their point of view. They are doing what they are supposed to do. They are exercising their legitimate right, which has been given to them by their own exclusive God and by their own exclusive prophet. So the crime and they will not do this amongst themselves. The Ummah is not to be so there are rules for that. Okay, there are heavy punishment for that if you do it against a fellow person, fellow believer. But against the disbeliever, what is the value of your life or my life? It's nothing. We are as good as our women are property. I mean, you read Quran and it comes there. They are property. Whatever is in the right hand is theirs by it's a legitimate right which the God has accorded. So the way to reduce crime is possibly through dharma. But I don't know whether we can have that kind of dharma coming back in this Kali Yuga. We need to have some saints who can actually re-establish that value system. Automatically, people are not criminals from inside. It is just the wrong belief. It's just the wrong belief of theirs which is making them criminals, do crimes against others whom they don't even recognize there is a crime done. Okay.
Very valid last point. Dr. Kinra Delst actually has written about this or spoke about this, that we keep blaming Aurangzeb, for example, for how horrible he was. And he says actually Aurangzeb may have been a very pious man.
He was.
The problem is not Aurangzeb. The problem is the doctrine that Aurangzeb followed.
Yes. The problem is never an individual as such. But that individual is taking life from a particular framework. He's seeing life from a particular framework. Now, if he sees life from the viewpoint of dharma, then he becomes one with everything. Then life is divine. Everything is united. You are connected with everything. It's a web of life. You can't harm others because you are harming yourself. If you are looking at it from the point of religion, then the religion divides everything. It divides time into two parts. So there is an age of darkness before the religion came into existence, and there is a time of knowledge which comes after. So there is an age of Jahaliya and there is an age of Ilm in Islamic terminology. It divides space into two parts. So, and there are lands of the believers and there are lands of those who don't believe, typically the heathens in Christian framework, and typically the kafirs or the mushriks in the Islamic framework. So there are lands of the believers, typically, for example, in Islam, you would call them Darul Islam, and typically the lands of non-believers or kafirs, which are called as Darul Harb. And the religious duty would tell you to actually convert the Darul Harbs into Darul Islam. So that becomes the religious duty. And similarly, in terms of humans, either you are a believer, Mu'min, or you are a kafir. And this is the root cause, in fact, where crimes arise, because you are nobody to them. I mean, your life is worth nothing. In any case, we should understand it very clearly. In any case, if you are following dharma, if you are not a believer, in any case, you are going to the hell. You are a fodder for the hell. What is the value of your life in any case? Let them enjoy your life. This is what, at least some believer is able to enjoy your life. Your property, your women, your sons, daughters, whatever. From their point of view, okay? Because in any case, you are the fodder for the hell. It's a worthless life you are living until unless you believe on them. So it's a kind of different kind of a perception to life. The world is divided into two parts, time is divided into two parts, space is divided into two parts. There are believers, there are non-believers. Believers have their divine duty fixed up, convert the non-believers, capture their lands. The rule of religion is to be established everywhere. Okay, so this is the value system. If we understand that, then we will stop probably to it's a good thing that we are saying that Aurangzeb was not a kind of, which is fine, but we should understand that it is not the person till the philosophy is alive, it is not, persons don't matter. I mean, persons don't really matter. You had USSR, where communism, everyone was a communist kind of. What happened? I mean, the philosophy is gone. It's the same people living, I mean, they have shunned away communism. That's it. Philosophies are important. It's not the people. So it's really somebody has to be blamed. It is not a person, a particular person. It is the philosophy behind it. What is the Islamic mindset, which is telling Aurangzeb to do this? What is the Christian mindset, which tells a particular kind of, let's say, British to invade all countries, reach everywhere, including New Zealand, Australia, capture US, go to these lands? What was that philosophy? It's God telling them to actually be fruitful, multiply, go everywhere, take their lands, convert them to this belief. And when conversion takes place, obviously their political power gets magnified. So this is what is religion. We need to understand clear distinction between religion and dharma.
So maybe a last question. I know there are no more questions coming forward, but what do we do about this? How do we, and I know there may be an obvious answer that Muslims have to be awakened, and especially from an Indian context, what do we really do about this, instead of only leaving it to, say, saints to come and rejuvenate and do a ghar vapsi or whatever else?
To the extent I understand, the rejuvenation will not take place without a spiritual power. So there is a supreme need for spiritual power. These are the days of degradation, and even saints have their own issues and own problems. This will also not be possible if we try to convert Muslims as such. I think there has to be, what has happened in these 1200 years of slavery is that we have lost the meaning of dharma itself. If we are into the dharmic mode, if we understand our dharma properly, yes, we will immediately recognize that religions are a different thing altogether. These are not dharmas. These are not religions. It's only in the name of God is being invoked. Only the name of God is being invoked for a personal kind of benefit, which can be had from the political power. We should understand this very clearly. And if you understand, if I go to the street, would I be killing every dog that I find that is barking upon me? If I understand, I would take my own route. But I don't know whether that is also a proper approach, or that is also a proper, because a significant portion of ours, we have bled for these 1200 years. We have, as a society, as a nation, we have been bleeding. Our both hands of this motherland are cut into the forms of cut off in the forms of Pakistan and Bangladesh, and we are likely to lose many more lands if this continues. So we have to be aware of our own philosophy, our own dharma first, to make a distinction, clear distinction between religions and dharma. It should be clear in our mind, because unless this is clear in our own kind of society, and it is not at all clear. I mean, why are our girls falling into this jihad, love jihad trap? We are not able to give them sanskars. This is what is happening. Parents are unable to do this. Education is unable to do this. I mean, education system, again, if you see the first five education ministers of India, 4 of them were Muslims. What kind of education system have we built? And one of them, the first one, Maulana Azad, in whose name I sit in this institute, ruled for almost 11 years. He had no formal Western degrees, no PhDs, no MA, no BA. He was only a completely Islamic scholar, Now, somebody who is a complete Islamic scholar, what will he do to education? So we don't, as a society, we have failed to kind of, and that is why the works of these people, the Indic people, Indus University, Sangam Talks, this is extremely important. Ashutosh Thakur, these are the people who can lead us into, I mean, a new kind of awakening. If not the saints, it will eventually happen only with the sankalp of a saint. But then, and even these people are, I can say with a lot of authenticity, are there because of those sankalps. But they are doing marvelous amount of excellent good work. I mean, if we reach people, if we tell them what is dharma, it takes no time. It takes no time because you have the seed inside you of that dharma, being in this civilization. This will fall. I mean, this secularness, the understanding that religions and dharma are same, this will fall within no time. It just goes. It takes no time. It has happened in my case. I was a complete secular, having all my degrees from IIT, etc., completely secular. It took no time. With spiritual things coming to you, it takes no time for people to understand and to change. So we have great future, but we should understand what is religion, what is dharma, what is our duty will come immediately to us when we understand the concept of dharma. Of course, there is a big fight and India is a strange kind of confluence. I'm writing this in my book. It's a strange confluence where every single philosophy has come in. I mean, communists are there, Islamists are there, Christianity is there. You are headed with, and your own people who don't understand. We are really for a tough fight. All our energy is basically going in fighting these issues, in trying to understand, in debating these issues, when actually this country should have liberated itself, and in these 70 years plus of its independence, it should have gone on to another level. Countries like Japan, who were destroyed in the Second World War, have looked at where they have reached by virtue of nationalism. How will you find nationalism here when your history is lost, when all symbols are corrupted of your civilization? I think the first thing is that we take care of our own home, try to understand what is dharma and what is religion. This is extremely important. And then once we have taken care of our own home, then possibly we can and people will convert within no time. They are our blood. They are not outsiders. They have it in their blood. The only thing is they have been appeased to this extent that today they have become absolutely kind of obstinate, absolutely unwilling to change. But people will convert when the time comes. Truth is immensely powerful. Truth is immensely powerful. No amount of belief or anything can stop the march of truth. Truth is a huge power. Dharma is a huge power. We need to unlock that power. That is what.